trying to do is bring people into his spider web, it seems, because like he eventually started offering me $2,000 for any woman I would bring to him, or girl. You know, for any girl I would bring $2,000. You know, he wanted them young and pretty and whatever. And then he also offered me $4,000 a month to stay there, to live there and work with him. And he offered to pay for me to study anything I wanted anywhere in the world. But, you know, I just didn't like being there. It made me very, very unhappy, and I was very terrified of them. So I guess the way I got away was I started putting on weight, because he didn't like it if girls were a bit podgy. So also I developed very bad bulimia, to be honest. Like, I used to go into the kitchen in the night and eat and just throw up because I felt so sick being at a place like that. So I guess I made myself unappealing to him. And then and didn't go ahead with, you know, the offers of money. I didn't, you know, bring people to him or do things like that. So then I guess I became useless to him.
Do you think one of the reasons he set up this pyramid scheme of getting girls to recruit other girls was so that down the road, if any of those girls turned against him and tried to say he'd done things to them, he could just turn around and say, look, she was a recruiter, she's just as bad, and kind of they could use that to destroy the reputation. The lawyers could destroy the reputation in court. Because I've seen that with Virginia. We've seen some of the media here say she was a bad person, she's a recruiter, all this stuff.
No, definitely. And, you know, I don't blame any of those girls who were pulled into that, because, you know, they were also younger than me, a lot of the girls. And also I lived in South Africa, you know, so if a girl's living in Palm Beach nearby and she has a few drinks one night, she might just make a mistake and take her friend there. You know, I don't blame them. You know, I lived here. So, you know, if I'd lived nearby, it's very likely that I could have taken a friend by mistake.
Yeah, and they were kids as well.
You know how young girls are, you know.
These girls, some of them were, you know, teenage kids, underage, and you can't blame them for what these monsters have indoctrinated them into.
Absolutely not. No, you can't. And remember, a lot of, they were financially disadvantaged. You know, I've read of stories where some of the girls' mothers needed serious operations. You know, if my mother needed a serious operation, I would have very likely gone ahead with more. You know what I mean? Well, actually, my mom did need an operation, but she was okay. But, you know, but I understand with people in like serious situations where they could be led astray by a man like that.
So over the 18 months, what was your lowest moment?
All of it. And, you know, after that, I was a mess after that. I was put on 3 tranquilizers a day. I couldn't even leave my house. Luckily, my mum was there to look after me. But I could never tell my mum what had actually happened. You know, I only told my mum and others after he died.
Before we get to that, Juliette, what was it like towards the end of that 18 months?
I became a mess. Like, I ended up with such severe panic attacks that I had to be hospitalized 10 times. That's why I was put on tranquilizers. Literally.
And that was while you were still, is that while you were still at one of his properties?
It was after it all. It was after the New Mexico thing that this all happened.
What was the New Mexico thing?
Well, you know, I saw like the UFO there, and then I have the memory waking up in a lab with people around me. You know, also when I used to have these panic attacks, I used to see like almost a spider coming down at me, almost like apparatus. I used to freak out. You know, I don't really know what these people did, and as we all know, we don't know what they're capable of. It's quite clear that they're signing up.
Because there's rumors of all kinds of experiments that happened in New Mexico on a baby farm.
Yeah, well, it is directly between Roswell and Dulce base, isn't it? You know, and we all know that the underground bases. You know, I did see him turn into something. I also saw a UFO there. You know, I very much saw it. There are many people who've seen things like that.
Did Epstein utilize tunnels? Did you ever have any knowledge of that?
I didn't actually see any tunnels to my knowledge, but, I do have the memory of waking up in a lab. And from the research that I've done and what I've looked into, it just seems that there has to be something underneath that island, because the accommodation on top was way too basic for a billionaire. A billionaire would have everything very smart, and, there was obviously something underneath. Because all there was a few chalets and, a room with like a kitchen and a TV. There must have been something underneath there.
Did you ever become aware of Epstein tape recording people doing things to compromise them?
When I was in New York, what happened the one night is, I'm a smoker, so I wasn't allowed to smoke in the New York mansion. So the one night I opened the window and I climbed out, and then I saw a big, so like imagine a big area like this, okay? I climbed out here, out of the room I was in. It's like 8 stories. Then in the middle down here, there's a big gold dome. So I'm sitting up here looking down. I'm like, anyway. So I smoked my cigarette. And then the next day, the man in charge of the cameras stopped me when I was walking around the mansion, the New York mansion. And he called me to the room and he said, did I open the windows last night? Because he noticed a difference in temperature regulation. And I don't know if I was honest and told him I smoked a cigarette. I didn't want to get in trouble. I think I might have told him no. But he just said to me, he took me in the room and he showed me like 40 screens. And he said everything here is being monitored. Because I think when I climbed out, they worry that someone's coming in or something from the top. And he just showed me and just told me, that everything's being watched. So you see, when I opened that window and climbed up with the cigarette, it was triggered. And then he told me that they don't only have that whole system there in New York, he also has it at his house in New Jersey. Because when he's not at work, he's at home watching the cameras. And it was like 40 TVs, like all this size, of every inch of the place. But, I never saw every room in that place. And I didn't see camera monitoring at any other property, but I'm sure they did have cameras monitoring there. But the New York one was very much, they had a whole room of it. It was a whole security room. Like the room was about 20 by 20 meters big, this security room.
So when Maxwell entered the picture, do you recall any conversations you had with her or what she said to you?
I was always very nervous of her because, she's a very, very intelligent woman and very frightening, very entitled. The only thing I remember is, I remember a lot, she told me how she was snogging Ralph Fiennes at a movie premiere. I really didn't speak to her much. I used to avoid her. But I remember Epstein hated the fact that I smoked cigarettes, and she actually stood up for me and she said, when her father died, she used to smoke 3 boxes a day or something. But I mean, I don't know if that's true, that her father even died. But
there's an interesting book on that that I read called The Assassination of Robert Maxwell. So, all right, so you're describing now where you're getting to the end of the 18 months and you're a mess. What got you out of there?
I suppose me putting on weight and stuff. I put on weight and started becoming a bit more sort of less obedient to him. And I wasn't bringing him girls and stuff as he wanted. But actually, do you know what else I think happened? Because when I was there, he brought out the article that Maria and Annie Farmer had written, about him. He was being very stressed about that at the time when I was there. He said that there were these girls who were infatuated with him, that were trying to destroy him. And then I think also it became hard for him flying people around after that, because he got caught pretty soon after that. So I don't know if it's maybe to do with that also. But I don't know. Also, he had that girl Nadia Monchenko there at the time. The girl from overseas, who apparently he bought from her parents, which is also very suspicious. I started to wonder, okay, if they're cloning people, maybe she's a clone. Because, she's also a pilot. She's beautiful and she's a pilot and she does all these things. It's like, okay. Much like, that woman, Elizabeth Holmes from Theranos, the company that David Boyes funded. It's like a perfect business. Like, create a big company, steal a lot of money, and just send the clone to prison. If you can make a clone, just blame it all on the clone, chuck the clone in jail. Sorry, I've distracted again. But, I think that the body we saw of Epstein's in the jail was a clone. Apparently he's still alive.
Did he tell you you had to leave, or did you just go, or how did you get out?
Well, he was. I would never stay there for long. He knew I would have got away. So, he used to bring me for these short trips, and that's why I also think they were taking our eggs. Because of the weird things that happened, and also the butterfly trust that they have. And then it's a horrible thing to think about, but if they really are into it, it would make sense for them to have their own farm of eggs. I suppose maybe, he also always said that after girls were 22, they were no longer attractive or useful. So, I wouldn't have gone back again anyway because, I was in New York after that. I had a boyfriend, an amazing boyfriend in New York. I spent 2.5 years of my life in New York after that. I never once tried to see Epstein.
Good.
And he was just a few roads down. I obviously didn't want to see him.
Was it hard though, because you were in a mess in your mind to have a boyfriend? Was it difficult?
That boyfriend actually helped me a lot because I told him about what had happened. He was a very patriotic American. He thought I was lying about what had happened because he was so patriotic, and eventually he realized I wasn't lying, and he's actually one of my saviors. He paid for therapists.
I can just imagine now you telling him Epstein, Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, and this guy's thinking, this cannot be real, kind of thing.
No, he didn't believe it.
Yeah.
But he helped me through so much. Wow. Paid for me to see therapists, and there even emails. He even testified for me with the boys' lawyers, because there are emails between him and I where he told me that not everyone's like Epstein and I mustn't be so scared.
So when you were having therapy, did you have good chemistry with your therapist?
Yeah, she was an amazing therapist. She helped me a lot. Yeah, it was like a talk therapist. I was never put on pills. Because, that's another thing. There's a lot of people, they've got the mental health fund for the survivors. Well, I won't go ahead with that mental health fund because I wanted my therapist to help. And she wrote up a whole plan, but they forced her to put provision for a psychiatrist. And as soon as there's a provision for a psychiatrist, there's a provision for pills, and I don't want pills.
Yeah, it's good to have a holistic approach. I agree with you entirely. Yeah. All right, so when you're with this boyfriend now, how old are you in the story at that point?
Tim, when I met him, I was about 25. Yeah, we dated from 25 to when I was 35.
And were your parents aware by the time you were 25 of what had happened with Epstein?
The only person I ever told was Tim. Never told anyone else. I was too ashamed.
Okay, and do you remember the year Epstein got arrested the first time?
2006.
And when you saw that in the news, did that resurrect memories for you and bring about trauma?
Yeah, it did. But also, he was such a clever person, Epstein, that he always made me feel like it was my fault. He made all the victims feel like it was their fault, and we were like cheap pieces of nothing. So, I was just like, I didn't really realize the depth of their evil right then. Only after he actually died did I have time to actually speak about it and look into it and then do more research myself. Also because I was given money through the fund. So I was able to step off the hamster wheel of work and just have a bit of time to sort of look into what happened. And that's when I realized I needed to start speaking out, because I didn't want to speak out at first at all. I just want to have a happy, quiet life. But then when I realized that they're victims who can no longer speak, I realized that I have to speak for them. And, that's why we're here, is speaking about Virginia being found dead. There's so many victims. I even heard another story about another victim who was apparently found drowned in Missouri or Mississippi recently. It's like,